My pleasure to welcome Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy. Congresswoman, we have members from every state participating today. And so to get started, what I'd like to do is just have you share a little bit about your background for our non-Florida members. We have a little bit of a photo for an inspiration on your background that may trigger something to share that you've shared with us once before. Zach, if you'll.
Yes, so that's my my dog, who was a puppy at the time, but you know, I did take all of the courses for the the CFP, so the financial planner classes, and I was pregnant with my daughter and never ended up taking the test, but he was helping me study there in that picture.
Yeah, you do have a little bit of background in our industry, but tell us a little bit about the Florida 7th District for our members and how it came about for you to represent the district in some of your work, and then we'll get into some deeper questions.
Sure. So Florida 7th Congressional District is in the Orlando area. I have parts of downtown Orlando and the northern suburbs. And I actually am in my my third term. I just got elected to my third term, but I still am not somebody who considers myself to be a politician, so to speak. I think of myself as a patriot and somebody whose family escaped communist Vietnam and rescued by the U.S. Navy and then given refuge here in the United States, and had the opportunity to really live the American dream. You know, first woman in my family to go to college on a combination of Pell Grants and scholarships, went to work in the private sector. And then when 9/11 happened, I saw a country I loved under attack. And so I quit my job there and went back to school and went to work at the Department of Defense. And then fast forward, I moved to Florida, had 2 kids and a husband, and was teaching finance at a local liberal arts school, as well as working in investments. And the Pulse nightclub shooting happened. And, you know, 49 innocent individuals had their lives taken by a gunman. And it made me just think, you know, you can't have a government that isn't serving the people, and people spewing hateful rhetoric and not expect to see it manifest itself in violence in your own community. So I made a brave or crazy decision and ran for Congress. I ran a 4-month campaign against a 12-term incumbent and unseated him, based on the belief that, you know, if you wanted to change Washington, you had to change the kinds of people that you send there. And I've been happy to say that I've consistently named one of the most effective and bipartisan members of Congress, because I'm really just trying to get things done.
And that you do. We've seen lots of your work, and it certainly shows. Thank you for taking the time to share some of that background with, as I said, our NAFA members, I'm certain, are familiar with your story, but our non-Florida members may not be. You know, you serve as co-chair of the Blue Dog Coalition, you're the chief deputy whip, you're a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus. Can you tell us a little bit about those leadership roles and what they mean to you?
Sure. As chief deputy whip, I'm a part of a team that really tries to make sure that before bills get to the House floor, that they represent the full and broad range of the Democratic caucus. We want to make sure, especially in a narrowly held House, that before bills hit the floor, they have taken into account all of the different perspectives of our Democratic caucus. And so I help count votes, and these days you don't have to count too high given the narrow majorities, but it's an important role. As Blue Dog chair, I chair a coalition of 20 members who are united behind fiscal responsibility and a strong national security, and seek to work in a pragmatic way to get things done on behalf of the American people and their constituents. And there are often Democrats who represent red or purple districts. So they sometimes have different perspectives, and I make sure that their voices are heard at the leadership table. And then finally, I'm a member of the Problem Solver Caucus, which is a group of members, Democrat and Republican, who work together to try to find common ground and bipartisan solutions. Excuse me, my dog is in here. Bipartisan solutions to the challenges that we face in this country, and try to lead from the center.
Great. Our members know dogs all too well. Mine often makes an appearance, so no worries there.
Sorry about that. It's
we're accustomed to working. Exactly, working from home now. Our members are actually going to go to the Hill tomorrow and visit with people. I know, as I said, our NAFA Florida members have visited with you before. Why is that important? And how is the constituent conversations with you helpful as you consider policy?
Well, I think it's really important to have your members meet with members of Congress. They need to know that developing a relationship with lawmakers can establish trust, and it allows them to serve as a resource on particular issues like insurance. You know, I took the courses for financial planning, almost a decade ago, and so much changes year to year, and there's so much that we do in Washington that can have impacts on the work that you're doing out in the field, but we may not know it. I don't know how many members of Congress are actually experts on the insurance industry. And so it's important we hear from people who are on the front lines, who are on the ground, about the challenges and the opportunities for the industry, and as well receive feedback about proposed legislation that might have might be well-intentioned, but have unintended consequences.
Yeah, and that's fair. One of the things, you mentioned how many people are experts on insurance, and there are a handful. We actually have a handful of former NAFA members that serve in Congress, but by and large, there aren't very many. So I think it is helpful to have our members have those conversations, and your office is always so welcoming. One of the issues that we care a lot about is retirement issues, and I know Ways and Means had a markup. Tell us a little bit about how you landed on that A committee, what it actually means, and maybe a little bit about the policy there.
Sure. The Ways and Means Committee is an exclusive committee, or considered an exclusive committee in the House, and I feel really fortunate to have secured a seat on that committee in just my second term. And it's an important committee because it touches just about everything from healthcare to insurance to trade to revenues, which is a euphemism for taxes. And it is really important to understand a wide range of issues and be informed in order to understand all of the different areas that we try to regulate. And a good example is that, in the various CARES package and COVID packages that we passed over the last year, about 65% of what was in those packages came through our committee. And today we just had a markup on what we're calling Retires 2.0. So we passed some retirement changes last Congress, and this is our next step at making some additional changes to incentivize people to retire, or to save for retirement, and to ensure that the incentive structures are there, and we help facilitate savings in this country. And I'm really excited that we were able to do that markup. It was one of the most bipartisan hearings or markups I've been a part of. If you wonder whether we get anything done in Washington on a bipartisan basis, I would point to the work that this committee has done on retirement in this country to say that, together, Republicans and Democrats work to make things better for Americans all across the country.
Yeah, it really is. The Ways and Means Committee is always an interesting committee to watch. They have, as you said, it's a select group of people. You make really important decisions in that committee, and it really is a place where bipartisanship sort of thrives. You mentioned taxes or revenue. You're a big believer in fiscal responsibility, and likewise, you're a supporter of our industry's efforts to help families and businesses achieve sort of that financial footing that they need. How do you suggest that our members communicate some of the dangers or the risks that policy changes could have in making it either more difficult or more expensive to insure against some of those financial risks and save for retirement?
Well, I am somebody who does believe in fiscal responsibility. I think we're sitting on a historic amount of debt in this country, and it's really important that we are responsible about how we handle that, because it'll affect the next generation, but it may also have an impact on our economy, as well as the things that we are able to invest in as a nation. I think that it's really important that we get constituent input, and it's important that your members are able to articulate the impact that your products and services have on everyday Americans. And we want to make sure that when we're hearing from our constituents or from industry advocates, that they are articulating the stories that they see on the ground, and do so in a way that humanizes the discussion, so that you're not talking about financial instruments or insurance per se, but what does that mean for a family that may have lost a loved one recently, or are going through some sort of property damage, whatever it is that they're dealing with, which happens to all of us. It's life. Helping members of Congress understand how your products and services help those folks really helps us to understand the impact of our legislation or potential legislation.
Thank you. People are already talking about the midterm elections. How do you see your role in Congress and on the Ways and Means Committee changing if the majorities were to change?
Well, I came into Congress in 2017 with a Republican president, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate. And was that Congress, as well as subsequent Congresses, consistently named one of the most effective and bipartisan members. I was able to get things done despite being a freshman in the minority party with all Republican government, because I think that that's the purpose of public service. And so I'm going to continue to work in a bipartisan way if I'm lucky enough to be reelected, and am in the next Congress, and if things do shift. The thing I think that's really important is that as members of Congress, you can't wait for the stars to align and have the party you want controlling the branch of government that you want. You just have to figure a way forward and legislate based on the whatever common ground you can find. And sometimes it's common ground that is like a wide open field, where I think the Retirement Act falls into that, or it might be common ground that's a little bit more of a sliver. But either way, we should find a path forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's something NAIF is a nonpartisan organization, and we look at everything through that lens of sort of financial security for all, and how do we get there? So I think that's really helpful to hear that, you look for whether it's a sliver or an easy win, if you will. One of the things, when we talk to members of Congress, or when we talk to our members about meeting with members of Congress and sharing those stories and trying to help illustrate what it really means to constituents, is sometimes we get responses back from our members that says, but you know what, my member actually really understands the industry. They understand our issues. They are supportive. Why is it important to continue to have those conversations with lawmakers if they're already have an understanding of the industry, or you already feel like they know what your issues are?
Well, I always think it's great if you are talking to a member of Congress who has some background on your industry, because it allows you to get to the meat of the issue a little bit more quickly. But as I mentioned before, if you're not every day in that business, you can't understand all the nuances that exist. And maybe some people aren't as far away from the financial planning courses that I was taking a long time ago as I am, but I think a lot of members of Congress, their experience in industry has aged as they have become members of Congress and have gone from, even people who are in, say, insurance experts, have gone from a narrow focus on just insurance to a very broad waterfront of issues, everything from national security and foreign policy to domestic issues. And insurance is just one narrow element within that. And that's why it's so important to hear from constituents and from practitioners, from people who are dealing with it on a day-to-day basis.
Thanks. The other issue that we bring up with our members too is sometimes, you mentioned it's important when meeting with a member of Congress. Sometimes they don't get to meet with a member of Congress. Sometimes they're meeting with staff. Why is it important for members to develop a relationship with your office or with your staff in addition to just a lawmaker?
Well, I can appreciate the fact that sometimes folks come in and they meet with our staff, and our staff look really, really awfully young and look like maybe they don't have the same amount of work experience as the executives that are coming in to talk to us. And that can be a little bit surprising, but I can assure you that there are so many young people on the Hill who are incredibly dedicated public servants who are there to listen and to report back to their bosses about what they're hearing from people who come in. And we, as members of Congress, have to all rely on our staff in order to be able to cover that really broad waterfront of issues and meetings and people that we have to connect with. And, on any given day, I can be triple booked at any given time. And so I really lean on my staff to collect the information and also to do the work that it takes to get a bill prepared for committee or prepared for the floor. And so the staff that you're meeting with are really great resources and a great way for your members to keep in touch with an office without necessarily being in front of the member of Congress each time.
And then, the other pushback that we get occasionally from our members is, you're the lobbyist, I am. Why can't you just establish those staff relationships? What is the difference both with staff and member level in having conversations, the difference between meeting with a lobbyist, and please say nice things about us, but really, or meeting with the constituents, because I think there are different conversations that occur, and I think it's helpful to hear why they're important to you.
Yeah, I think about the advocacy world as subject matter experts. What you do is you consolidate a lot of different members' perspectives and organize the issues and get to know the members on the Hill and provide the conduit for your members to actually have those conversations. And for members of Congress, it's always great to go to talk to the actual practitioner, because the level of passion that people bring to the issues that they have to work on day to day, but they don't understand why, Congress legislated it this way or regulates it this way. It doesn't make any sense. It really makes a real impression on members of Congress. And it's often how you get change done, is you catch the member of Congress's attention with that passion and that knowledge about the specific impact on human lives, people who are the industry clients, these American families. And we're all trying to, in many ways, represent those American families. You're trying to amalgamate all of their experiences, bucket them into the key issues, and present their challenges, because this working family is busy trying to pick up kids from carpool and take them to soccer and get food on the table. They don't have time to go knocking down their member of Congress's door. And as a member of Congress, I'm trying to represent that person. And if using conduits, people who are in industry, who are advocates, allows me to hear from a broader spectrum of Americans about the work that I'm charged with doing, then I'm always happy to do that.
Right, thank you. And then we have, in order to run for Congress, it costs a lot of money. There are fundraisers that occur. Is that a way for our members who are sort of just stepping into the process to get to know some of the candidates that are running for Congress and establish a relationship? Is that a meaningful way?
Sure, it's one way for new candidates who are out there, but my door is open to my official office door is open to all of my constituents, whether or not you've participated in any sort of political activity, because we care about the policy elements. But certainly a way in which others have connect is also through the political side of the work that candidates and members do.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about the district office too. I know we're getting close on time, but can you explain sort of the difference between your staffing in the district versus in DC? Even though in DC, I guess we're kind of virtual now too, but.
Well, so my DC and my district office work very closely together to make sure that we are listening on the ground in our district, and then we are amplifying their voices and meeting their needs in Congress. So my district office has outreach coordinators, they have constituent caseworkers. An outreach coordinator just basically stays plugged into various communities and make sure that people know how to access our office. Our constituent caseworkers will get shoulder to shoulder with any one of our constituents who are struggling with dealing with the federal bureaucracy, which is often rife with difficulty working with them. They'll get shoulder to shoulder with them and advocate on their behalf, whether that's around getting Social Security benefits or veterans benefits or getting somebody's visa processed, all of those types of things. And then they are also in charge of all of our district office activities. We try to get out in our community and listen, whether through town halls or listening sessions, those types of things. So they're really my on the ground folks, and they feed all of this information to my legislative team in Washington that helps to craft bills and move forward with recommendations on what to support or not support as far as votes that come up, and then they amplify the work of the staff both in DC and in the district. So you can't have one without the other, and they work very closely together.
Yeah, well, and you'll be pleased to know that we encourage our members to do both. When you're live in DC and in person, we usually have this meeting in person and encourage them to go meet with their lawmakers. But we also encourage them to meet with lawmakers and staff back in the district. And we especially remind them, you know what, members of Congress actually like to hear thank you too. They need to know when they're doing stuff right. So you'll be pleased to know that we do encourage our members to go and say thank you when we made an ask and you've actually heard us and you listen to the constituents and you're making right decisions, that we're being thoughtful and appreciative of your efforts and work for our industry. We are getting really close to time, and I know that you have lots of other things to do. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you want to sort of close out for the members?
Well, I guess maybe let me just say thank you. This last year has been a hard year for our community and our country, and there has been loss. And I think the work that you all have done has really helped people through a tough moment. And so I just want to say thank you to all the professionals that you represent who might be watching this, who might wonder, whether they're a member of Congress or members of Congress, understand what it is they're doing. I just want to say a heartfelt thank you, and good luck tomorrow as you go out and connect with all of your members of Congress across the Hill.
Great. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you. Always good to have a conversation and a chat with you. Have a great day, and thanks again.
Great. Thanks so much.